as I was working on behalf of her family, her and her children, I started to realize that the Department of Social Services Protective Services did not seem very knowledgeable. And they were not doing some of the things that anyone would think they would do. The two pediatricians, she had signed releases, contacted me and said, we have sent in the requested form, which we call 3200, that reports child abuse, and no one has contacted us. And I said, no one's contacted me either. And that really piqued my interest. Simultaneously, I had a client come in my office to see me personally who told me she had just left the Department of Social Services, and I asked her why. Because she was a protective service worker. She said, because all I have is a high school degree and 8 weeks of training. And I can't, she said, I don't feel qualified pulling children out of homes. It's terrible. I just cannot do it and live with myself. At that point, I decided to do follow-up to see how many of these protective services people that remove children actually had any kind of a license.
Right.
And so what I did is I contacted the man who was head of the family for the state, Children and Family. And through Freedom of Information, he gave me all the names of the people that work for the Department of Protective Services, Department of Human Services. And so what I did with about 3 or 4 other women, we looked them up, and what we found was absolutely scary to me, because you'll see here that we went through the names of every single person, and all of these in pink are people that have no licenses or special training other than the 8 weeks that they were trained. Some of them had like a college degree in history or something like that, or music, but you'll see page after page after page where they were not trained at all. Now that began to make sense to me. In fact, I summarized this up. This was in 2005, that Michigan had 116 county directors. 16 had any kind of a license whatsoever. 100 had no license whatsoever. Then I looked at the supervisors in Michigan. 615 of the supervisors, 75 had a license, 540 had no license of any kind. Then I looked at what we call the caseworkers, who now have begun to call themselves social workers. There were 5,393 caseworkers. 445 of them did have a license. 50 of those that were licensed as technicians only. But there were 4,948 caseworkers in Michigan that were unlicensed.
Wow.
At that point, I went to the State Board of Licensing and produced that information, and the State Board of Licensing decided to do nothing about it whatsoever. And so that really began to occur to me that perhaps they were not going to do well or didn't do well in so many of these cases. My analogy was it was like having an orderly in the hospital just be renamed a doctor and have them start doing surgery.
Right.